Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Shh. This is a live podcast where we talk about love, sex, intimacy, and relationships, and everything connected to that. So, who am I? My name, of course, is Tila. I'm a sex educator, relationship expert, and published author. You can check out some of my stuff on exploresextalk.com. There's a whole bunch of articles and awesome, fantastic free resources there, as well as some other stuff that we'll chat about a little bit later. So, as I mentioned, this is a live podcast. For any of you joining us for the very first time, this is, like I said, live. So your comments and questions and thoughts do matter. So when you type them into the chat, they're going to pop up in the video feed. And we also accept live callers. So if anybody chooses to call in or if anybody comments a question, please be respectful. We want this to be a fun, safe place to be. And there is no such thing as a stupid question. Okay, so opening up the phone line. So if you want to call in and have a question or a thought or a comment or a story or a tip, or you just want to share, you can call in completely toll free at 1-877-777-5589. So how is everybody doing today? How is everybody feeling? Just making sure all of our feeds are up. It looks like we are. We are, of course, broadcasting to Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. So today's topic is help. I think my partner is cheating. And so we're going to talk about what to do if you suspect your partner or spouse is cheating, and what can you do about it? What should you do about it? And what should you not do about it? This is a really challenging area for lots of people because there's so much gray area. And there's lots and lots of places that things can go wrong, and it can sabotage relationships pretty quickly. It's a good thing to chat about. It's a good thing to know about. Lots of people approach the situation entirely wrong, I'm sorry to say. But c'est la vie. That's why we're here. That's why we're going to chat about it. A good place to start is, isolating why you feel your partner is not being faithful. And to sort of narrow down on that, there's a number of questions that you should ask yourself. For starters, a good one is actually, is there an expectation for your partner to be faithful? What conversations have been had around boundaries and the relationship and the status of the relationship? Now, the reason I bring this up is because a lot of newer relationships, people are not having that conversation, and they're just sort of making some assumptions about the relationship and what stage the relationship is at. And sometimes, unfortunately, people can have mismatched ideas about, whether or not they're exclusive, whether or not they're allowed to see other people. What is the expectation there, right? I mean, there's also lots of people who are in poly relationships too, where they date multiple people at the same time. So it's really, really important to be having those conversations in the start of the relationship, as the relationship evolves and grows and changes, so that you both have a clear of an understanding of what kind of relationship you have agreed to and what those expectations and boundaries are. Another good question is, what has made you suspicious? What has made you feel like your partner's not being unfaithful? Now, a lot of the time people will just say, well, I just know, or I just feel like something's wrong, or things have just been different. How have they been different? What feels wrong? What about whatever your partner is doing or acting or saying or, not doing, what feels different? Try and pinpoint what is making you suspicious. Because there's lots of things people sometimes feel that others are cheating because they change how they respond to their partner, or maybe they stop engaging in sexual activity with their partner, or maybe they just completely withdraw. Now, these are all very legitimate signs that could point to an unfaithful partner. However, it could point to something else entirely that is completely unrelated. So I know it's tempting to just be like, oh, I'm just going with my gut feeling. I just know. Okay, well, gut feeling is right about 50% of the time. And that's for most people. Even if you feel like your gut feeling is right all of the time, your gut feeling comes from observations that you don't maybe intentionally or consciously realize that you're making, but all add up, right? It's all the little things. It's those little details that matter. And it's the little details that your subconscious mind picks up on. And that's what feeds into your gut feeling that something is wrong. So taking some time to sort out what is the root of this uneasiness, and, what is making you unsure that you can't trust your partner. Because obviously cheating is a huge breach of trust. It's a big deal, particularly for some people. I'd say that, there are some people who feel that cheating is not a big deal. I guess it sort of depends on your history with it. I'd say the average person feels that cheating is a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big betrayal of trust, so that's what we're drilling down to is trust. Can you trust your partner? What makes you feel like you can't trust your partner? And the last thing is sort of, have you guys talked about it yet? How did that go? What went right? What went wrong? Lots of couples feel that they don't need to talk about it, or if they're gonna talk it to their partner, like they suspect their partner is cheating, they don't want to talk to their partner without proof. Please do not snoop. Snooping is not okay. It doesn't matter if you're going for proof that a partner is cheating. It's not cute. It's not justifiable. Their potential betrayal of trust does not excuse an intentional betrayal of trust and breach of privacy. If trust is so crucial in relationships, and it's something that is so easy to damage. And once it's damaged, it is so difficult to repair. And in some cases, it may never be repaired. Okay? And snooping, unfortunately, that's one of those things that can be just as damaging to a relationship as cheating. Maybe I'm not saying they're the same, but the breach of trust still feels very, very real. And that is what makes it the same, that breach of trust. And if you can't trust your partner, this is an entirely different matter. If you are feeling so much like you can't trust your partner that you have to snoop, this is a whole other reason. We should be going back to that question. What makes you feel like you can't trust them? If you feel like in a conversation your partner is just going to lie, what's causing that fear? Why do you think they're not going to be honest with you? Right? These are important questions for us to ask, because like I said, relationships are damaged by snooping spouses just as easily as they can be damaged by cheating ones, because it's that breach of trust. And when it's lost, for some people, it can never be rebuilt, particularly if they've been in relationships where their partner hasn't trusted them, and maybe they're not cheating. Maybe there is a legitimate reason for the way they're acting differently or weird. And, all of a sudden they find out that their partner has been snooping behind their back and didn't just come talk to them. It can take time to recover from stuff like that, and some relationships never do. So the moral of the story here is 2 wrongs do not make a right. Do not snoop. There are better ways. There are better ways to get to the truth. And there are better ways that are going to be better for you. Many people, when they become a snooping partner, they're never able to build up that level of trust in the future, either with the same or a different partner, because instead of building trust that stabilizes the relationship, it actually can undercut healthy relationships, because, that fundamental trust in your partner isn't there. So the snooper never feels satisfied until they've snooped to validate their own concerns, or to validate their own trust. Their trust isn't earned until they snoop, but they're really betraying the other person's trust. So it can be, I'm not saying everybody is that way, but it can be one of those things that creates a false sense of security that is actually damaging to healthy relationships and damaging to personal growth. Okay? So it's something you need to think about really carefully, and I do encourage you not to do that. Like I said, there are better ways. So let's talk about that. What can you do that isn't snooping? Well, I'm a huge advocate of clear and honest communication. So I would say that's the first step. You need to talk to your partner. Good communication is so important, and it really is one of those strong foundations of healthy relationships. So in any relationship, particularly intimate ones where we make ourselves vulnerable, you should be able to voice your concerns, voice your fears. If you're worried your partner's stepping out, you should be able to communicate that to your partner without serious retaliation. Now, this is often easier than it sounds, of course, but both people in a relationship, they have an obligation to try to be patient and respectful with each other, and to listen, but also to try and phrase things constructively. So it's important, like I said earlier, that they may be acting in a weird way for a different reason. So when you go to open this conversation, particularly if it's the first time you're voicing these concerns, try not to come out as accusing. Use your good communication skills. If they've been distracted, maybe open with that. You could be like, hey, it seems like you've been really distracted. And they might say, well, distracted like what? Or just, what do you mean? Or, yeah, maybe I have been really distracted, and it's sort of the opening to a conversation, right? And you can get into that. Try to stay away from phrases like I feel or I noticed. You want to keep the conversation about them, because you want to know what they're going through, and you want them to open up to you and to engage with you. And when we feel like people are accusing us of things, we automatically get defensive. It's instinctive, it's reactive. We brace ourselves for a fight, we move to defend ourselves, and it doesn't matter at that point what the truth is, because all of a sudden we have this person attacking us, whether, verbally attacking us, hopefully not physically, but, if we feel attacked even verbally, we're going to defend ourselves. We're going to get defensive, which of course is going to seem suspicious to the person who is concerned about cheating. So it's not a good way. So that's why I say try and keep the conversation focused on them. What are they going through? What challenges are they facing? How are they feeling? Try not to bring your own feelings into it at this point. This is all about fact finding. You want to know what's going on. So, try and keep your tone light and inquisitive. You want to know, right? Yeah, because that defensive reaction too, sometimes depending on what people's history with relationships are, they'll get defensive just at the accusation, even when they've done absolutely nothing wrong, because they're outraged by their partner not being able to trust them. Does that make sense? Everybody still with me so far? You guys have any thoughts or questions about anything I've said so far? So that's why it's important to keep the conversation open. Avoid asking why questions. I know I've talked about this before, but really this is the time to stick to those what and how questions. They say they've been stressed. What has been making you stressed? They say they've got a lot on your mind. What's on your mind? Get into those issues and just keep on asking, your how and what questions. Reflect what they're saying. They say I've been really stressed. You could be like, really stressed? See what they say next, If they start talking about maybe feeling isolated, oh, you're feeling isolated? Keep it going. Keep reflecting, what they're saying. It makes them feel that you're listening to them, and it's encouraging them to open up and give you more information. Okay? And it's most importantly, it's keeping that accusing tone out of it. Because anybody in this sort of delicate conversation of fidelity, people clam up super fast, right? So make sure to keep it light and open. And you know what? Sometimes when you're able to do that, people, even if people are cheating, if you're able to keep that light, inquisitive, and open tone and get to the heart of what's going on with them, some people will actually open up and admit that they have been cheating, and they feel guilty about it usually. And now you've created this space where it's okay for them to tell you, right? It's okay for them to be honest. And you don't have to worry about them lying, right? You don't have to worry about if they're just being defensive and upset because you're accusing them, or if they're actually just being defensive because they actually are cheating and they're just trying to hide it, So going with that inquisitive tone makes a world of difference. And the other important part to that too is knowing when to play the silences. Okay, if you ask your partner a question and they don't say anything, just wait. Let the silence go. It can feel uncomfortable, particularly for some people. They have a hard time with just silence. But silence can be something very powerful. You've asked a question. Now you're waiting for the answer. And the longer you let the silence go, the more pressure they have to answer your question. Or in some cases, it's not necessarily pressure. They have the time to think about how they're going to answer your question. Sometimes people need that time to think about what they want to say and how they want to say it. And they can't think about that if you're asking one question, another question, another question, another question, another question, right? So you gotta, one question, let it stand. Wait for their answer. Because then they also know that you want to hear what they have to say. It's not just a barrage of questions. It's not an interrogation. It's a conversation. Does that make sense? You guys still with me? So what happens if you have this conversation, they open up, and you find out that they have been cheating? At what point are you allowed to be upset or angry? I'm going to say that everyone is always entitled to their own emotions. You are allowed to feel how you feel. It is equally important to react with an appropriate level of response. Now, how somebody responds to finding out that their partner has been cheating is going to vary quite significantly. It depends on how you generally react to things. It also depends on what your history is, the relationship, what the relationship has been like. Sometimes there's so many different little factors that can really change how someone would react. And whatever emotions you're feeling, whether it's a level 1 where you don't really care for whatever reason, to a level 10 where it's like this is the most earth-shattering news you've ever had in your life, you are entitled to feel how you feel about it. You are also entitled to ask for time. Time to process, time to take some space, time to do whatever you need to do at that moment. However, I would not encourage anyone to react to that person. Mostly because if you if you react super strongly to this admission, they're immediately going to regret that they told you, which means that depending on the state of your relationship and how you do, either of you want this relationship to continue, how you react in that moment can determine how bad things get and whether or not you can work things out. Now, I am advocating very strongly here that people take the high road and try to manage their reaction. Like I said, you're entitled to feel how you feel. Just think about what kind of outcome you want. Do you want to salvage this relationship with this person? Do you want them to continue to be honest with you? How strongly you react in that moment is going to be an indication of if they have something else serious to tell you down the road. Are they going to be open about it? Does that matter to you? And in the heat of the moment, those are not questions you should be asking yourself, because in the heat of the moment, you're going to feel hurt, you're going to feel angry, you're going to feel upset, and all of those things are going to feel very, very powerful and strong. And in the heat of the moment, when those emotions are burning hot, you are not going to care about the answers to those questions later. But you might care later. Okay? So a good thing to think about going into these conversations, which I probably should have mentioned before, is what it's a good idea to have a good understanding of how you think you would like to resolve this. If your partner is cheating, do you intend to end the relationship? If your partner is cheating, do you intend to work it out? Do you want to be friends with this person? Do you never want to see them again? You know, what is going to be the outcome of finding out? And I know a lot of people will say, well, I don't know because I don't know the specifics. And, you know, there's a lot of variability. I once had an ex-partner cheat on me and get the person he cheated on me with pregnant, which was a hard thing to hear. And, you know, like, you have to understand where you want the relationship to be, or have an understanding of where you want it to be. And like I said, I know that's hard because you don't know how bad it is, but having some sort of yardstick or some sort of general idea is going to help you in that moment when the emotions sort of hit hard, so that you can make the best choice for yourself. I mean, we're going to talk about whether or not you should take back a cheating partner in a little bit, but nobody can make that decision for you. Nobody can tell you what's best. Lots of people will say, you know, never take back a cheater, move on, you deserve better. You do deserve better. And as a general rule, lots of people who cheat tend to cheat again. I'm not going to say that's true of everyone, because it certainly is not. However, it is true of enough of a majority that it is something to think about. If they cheat once, they're likely to cheat again. So nobody can tell you how to make that decision, but you need to decide for yourself, at least have an understanding for yourself where things are. And that's going to help you in that reaction. That's going to help you manage when you have that emotional reaction. How big of a reaction do you want to have? How do you want things to go? It's important to remember that no matter how hurt you may be feeling, it's not an okay time to perpetuate abuse. Hitting, kicking, punching, laying down tons of verbal abuse may feel good, but it's not going to help. It's going to make things worse. And all you're doing is perpetuating a cycle that isn't healthy. So I know taking the healthy step is not always the easiest or the most rewarding in that moment. But the only thing you can truly control is how you react. So how do you want to control it? How do you want to be in that moment? When you look back on that moment, How do you think you're going to feel about it? Right? Those are questions you want to ask yourself. And I know it's hard in the heat of that moment, but try to keep those things in mind. You know, who's the person? What kind of person do you want to be? Right? Now, on the flip side, if you have that conversation and you delve into a whole bunch of stuff with your partner, asking them all these questions about what has been different for them and how they're doing, and they don't admit to cheating, and they don't find another reason, or they don't give you another reason, for why things have been different, at that point, what do you do? Now, if you're still, it depends on the quality of the conversation. Sometimes it's hard for people to open up. Sometimes it's hard for people to talk about what's really going on. And some people, unfortunately, feel that they are a burden, so it's hard for them to share. And all of that can sort of feed into that suspicion that we talked about. But, that's what I'm going to say, kind of go back to the gut instinct that we're talking about. That's really made up of all those subconscious cues. How do you feel about the conversation that just happened? Did it lay your fears to rest? If it didn't, why not? What is still bothering you? Get to the root of what's still bothering you, right? I hate to say it, but some of us do carry baggage from past relationships, and that can flavor our relationships now. If we've been cheated on in the past, it can be really hard for us to trust. And it can be really hard if a partner does something, even if it's innocent and it's not a sign of cheating, but maybe it's just, a sign of stress or hardship they're enduring. It can still make us feel like that, and it can still trigger a panic response. Only you are really going to be able to determine whether or not that's true for yourself, which is super hard to know. So I'd recommend talking it over with a friend. If you have this conversation with your spouse or partner and you're still not convinced, but you don't know why, talk about it with a friend. Just talk it over. Keep talking until you talk it out. And hopefully that will help, bring a bit more clarity to the situation. So do you have any thoughts or questions about any of that? So far, so good. All right, moving on. So I mentioned we were going to talk about what happens when, your partner has cheated. Should you take a cheating partner back? It's a difficult question to answer. As I mentioned, it's one that's very personal and really only you can answer. So there's a couple things you should think about and consider when trying to make that decision. So one of those things is that the cheating happened for a reason. So there's all kinds of different reasons that people struggle with remaining faithful. And sometimes it's because their needs aren't being met. And other times it's just because the current relationship, maybe the commitment is not in line with their values, or maybe they simply cheat because they're not committed to their relationship. So there's lots of, that's not an exhaustive list by any means. There's lots of reasons why people cheat. So if you're considering staying with the person, you need to know why this cheating happened. If this isn't addressed, there's definitely a super strong chance that the cheating will happen again and again and again. So you and your partner need to have a really serious and open discussion about what caused the cheating to take place. Are their needs being met? If not, what do they need? How are they feeling about what they've communicated to you? Are they asking for compromises? If they are they compromises you can handle? Not everybody is built for monogamy. and that's okay, but you need to have a good match, right? Um, it's important to remember too that, when you're talking about stuff like this, any of this conversation, those emotions are going to be running pretty hot. So remember, do not be afraid to take the conversation slowly or take breaks as needed. If you are planning to stay together, you might want to consider a relationship counselor, someone to help you to work through the issues and build a stronger foundation and better communication. And there's nothing wrong with relationship counseling, like at all. Sometimes it's really helpful for people to have someone who is completely impartial and who will look at the situation and basically call people out on things that they may not be willing to acknowledge otherwise. And I know lots of particularly heterosexual men are resistant to counseling because everything is the man's fault. That is not true. Everything is not the man's fault. And you should not be afraid of going to relationship counseling. Don't be afraid of the process, okay? It's healthy. It can build better relationships, and there's nothing wrong with it. So do not be afraid to use the tools at hand, okay? Another thing to consider is that after the cheating, the relationship will never be the same again. It's never going to magically go back to the time before the cheating. No matter what happens or how the two of you proceed, it may be that the cheating caused you to work things out and it actually makes the relationship better. It also could go the other way and make the relationship less supportive and less satisfying. But no matter what directions it goes, you need to understand that it will never be the same. And you need to be okay with that. You need to understand that too if you're going to make an educated choice. It's not magically ever going to go back to the way it was. And there's nothing that either of you two can do to magically make it go back to the way it was. Things have changed, and it can impact, like I said, the trust of the relationship, and that's going to have a huge impact on your relationship overall, because it's going to come out in all these little ways throughout the relationship. Lots and lots of little ways. Trust has a tendency to do that. So, knowing that things are going to be different, that's part of the big decision. Are you going to be okay with exploring things, knowing that for better or worse, they're going to be different? It's never going to be the same. And, try and figure out, where is that line for you? Where is that line in the sand? What do you need to make this right? And is it reasonable? Okay. It's important to know too that love is sometimes just not enough. Betrayal can be a really hard pill to swallow. And, it's perfectly okay to say that, no, this isn't going to work out for you. If it's hit you really hard, it may not matter how much you love someone. It can be impossible to forget it or get past it. It doesn't mean that you don't love that person. Love and trust are not mutually exclusive. You can have love you can love someone and not trust them. You can trust someone and not love them. And, it's, you need trust. You need trust for healthy forms of love. And if that's not going to happen for you, like I said, sometimes love just isn't enough. So you deserve to have people in your life that you feel that you can trust and that you can be honest with. So you need to be honest with yourself to take some time to think about it. And, is this relationship worth moving past all that betrayal? If it is, are you in a place where you think that that's possible? Staying with someone you can't trust is not a testament to how much you love them. It's really a recipe for lifelong unhappiness, because, being able to repair that trust and move past things has nothing to do with how much you love them, as I sort of mentioned. And, you may want to move past it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to. And if you don't know that right away, that's okay. You know, you don't have to have all the answers. Everything is different and changing all the time, but just be honest. If you and your partner are talking about this and they're like, hey, I think I can make this work. You know, do you want to make it work? And you can just be honest and say, you know what? I'd like to try, but I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work out. Right? So I think at the end of the day, you're not under any obligation to stay with this person. Okay? Regardless of the countless reasons why you think you should, you know, whether you have children or maybe like a huge friend circle and it's going to be awkward, or maybe all your stuff and you don't want to move. It doesn't matter how many reasons you think you should stay. You're not under any obligation to stay. Okay? And your decision needs to be based on what you think is going to make you happy in the long term and what's going to be best for you. And if you think that that sounds selfish, you have to realize that when we're talking about long-term relationships, your happiness really does matter. Because if you're not happy, the longer you're unhappy, you're going to be more unhappy, you're going to be more unhappy, you're going to be more unhappy. It's going to sink into other areas of your life. You're going to make other people unhappy. I know some people are like, oh, but we have kids. We should work it out for the kids. Yeah, you know, if you know that you're never going to be happy and you're just staying for the kids, all you're doing really is modeling to your children unhappy relationships. And that's what they're going to base their concept of an ideal. This is what the ideal should be, because it's what my parents had. But if that's not healthy, is that really something you want your kids to model? And it's not a conscious choice. I'm not going to consciously think, oh, I'm going to look for exactly what my parents had. But it's what feels right to us as we get older and we start looking at relationships we look for. Not intentionally, but subconsciously, we look for dynamics that we saw growing up because they feel right to us, because they feel comfortable to us. So if the kids are a consideration, there are better ways to work it out. There are better ways to show healthier relationships than staying in a relationship where you're never going to be happy. The last thing I want to say is safety is a super important consideration. And this needs to be taken really seriously. You should do what's in your best interest to stay safe. I mean, concerns about safety leaving a relationship is kind of another topic that's really big and too much to be covered in this one particular episode, but it is something that is important to mention. There are a number of supports out there and available. I will link some in the write-up for this article, and I post about them on social media all the time as well. So if you do need support leaving a relationship, it is out there. You can find it. There are people who are willing to help you. But yeah, so I want to wrap up on that whole, you should choose what's best for you when choosing whether or not you're going to stay in a relationship where someone has cheated. I've gone on a little bit longer than I intended to today. I hope you guys enjoyed it and it was helpful. I'm gonna think we should wrap it up here because we're getting into the 40-minute mark. So thank you guys so much for joining for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please join us next week, July 21st at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you enjoyed this episode or this series and you find it helpful, please share it with somebody. Share the love, share the knowledge, share the fun, share the laughs. And if you're looking for more, please check out my website, exploresextalk.com. And for that little extra zing, maybe sign up for our Sexy Hero Society, which is an online membership that gives you extra awesome content every single month. And it's super cool. And we use it profits are used to fund sex ed programs, both online and some of the stuff that we do offline as well. So thanks guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. Take care.